Shalom. I am going to pull up this meme that Nick made, which was hilarious. So the fine print is, so there's this Reformed denomination, the Christian Reformed Church. They're having their annual meeting where they make decisions and stuff. Anyway, there's this pastor guy in the denomination named Paul Vanderklay who has a YouTube channel that sort of blew up during the Jordan Peterson thing. Anyway, he's covering these meetings, hashtag Synod CRC, and yes, he's got the hashtag wrong, on his channel. He couldn't, typo, do it last year. It's a long story. And anyway, I'm just refreshing my feed until I can listen to more of his commentary. Me? No, I'm not Reformed at all. Barely even Protestant, to be honest. And I retweeted it. I feel personally attacked. I do feel personally attacked. Barely even Christian, to be honest. Okay. So I have to admit, I've been venting on the CRC Twitter thing. So the reason I'm doing this is we delayed the Hebrew Bible study tonight because I was supposed to have construction in my kitchen, but the guy didn't show up, and Jason's going to be late too, and so I was gonna. So maybe Jason will be on. He just texted me. Maybe he will be on earlier, so we'll actually get the Bible study going instead of wasting our time with this Christian stuff. Yeah, that's bad. What do they call these things? Tangelos? What do they? Mandarins. Mercut mandarins. Hey, Sandy. Sandy is kinda sorta CRC. Kinda sorta. Mo will not be on because these CRC people with their human sexuality, he's married with children. Can you believe that? That sinner. So he's not going to be on. Phlebas might be on. We might just end the stream early. Hello, Emma. When Jason gets here and do Bible study and stop wasting our time with these people who don't care about the Bible, called Calvinists. Anyway, I've been venting my rage at the Wokarati by following the CRC because. So the only news I got, I didn't actually watch Senate today, but I did get the news that Senate decided they are not going to delay the implementation of the human sexuality report, meaning kicking people out. It looks like they're actually going to do that pretty soon. And people have been complaining online, and Schadenfreude is a sin, and I am the worst of sinners. What can I say? And somebody on Twitter suggested that Mo and I do a just chatting for the Synod commentary. So here it is. Here, I'll show you guys my my silliness, getting into fights with with supposed CRC members online. Appeals to God's word in defense of a traditionalist position is lazy and demeaning, as if others who disagree with that position don't love and honor God's word. Do better, CRC Synod, with 27 likes. Do better, because that isn't woke bullshit. I replied, not as if. Yes, the vast majority of the people who disagree, in fact, very much, neither love nor honor the Bible at all. So tired of hearing that there is no biblically defensible position for support of SSM, same-sex marriage. Classis Grand Rapids East. So the CRC is, for those who, I don't know who would be watching this who wouldn't know what a Classis is by now, but so the CRC has churches, classes, which are kind of like dioceses, and then they have synod, and that's like the entirety of their hierarchy. Honestly, if I were running the CRC, I think they need to join a larger world organization that isn't just Dutch, that has is actually so they have the 3 forms of unity: the Heidelberg Catechism, Belgic Confession, and Canons of Dort. Why I know this stuff? They really need to join a worldwide Catholic 3 forms of unity Protestant organization, so that they stop being like a bunch of frozen chosen and actually have a, all nations coming together under Christ, Great Commission type thing, as opposed to Kyle Maynard Shop, whose Classis GRE literally wrote a 143, I'm guessing 143 page study on it. It's 7 years old. Read it, CRC Synod. And Mr. Mao responded, 7 years. Read and reviewed by the Human Sexuality Report Committee. Spoken by A1B to Committee 8 last year. Out there for everyone to read for 7 years. I will stop my rhetorical confusion to say, it is obvious that this argument is not biblically defensible. It is revisionist, contrary to God's word. And I responded, how dare you refer to the Bible? What are you, some sort of Christian? And I, before that response, I quote tweeted that because if you write a bullshit study that no intelligent human being takes seriously, then obviously it is right. And this is not CRC stuff. This is not CRC stuff. Not CRC stuff. See, I'm not all preoccupied by the CRC. Not CRC stuff. Kind of, sort of not CRC stuff. I have to say, you seem to assume that I am somehow not accepting of trans people or gay people or any other people, which is really silly. It is. Yeah, I got into a thing with somebody who may, in fact, be watching right now. I don't know who this Aiden Chalka guy is. Is that Phlebas? It is Phlebas.
I made it.
And there are people making.
Can you hear me? I'm not on too often, so.
I can, in fact, hear you. Yes.
All right, let's do this. I was hoping Mo would be here because he is a pastor, and whatever, it'd be interesting, but he can't make it, so that's cool.
So according to Nick, who made that wonderful meme, which describes me very accurately, the average person using CRC Synod is following a Matthew Pajot matrix chart. They don't use arguments, they just manipulate language.
Yeah, so I made a whole list of thoughts quickly. And
Go ahead.
I totally agree with Free William. Like, I was actually a little bit surprised how much, like, I don't know, I'm going to call it DEI language was inserted into the documents. Like, just by using the language, it feels like they cede half the argument.
Okay. So this is magical language that the people on the left have.
Yeah.
And people on the right don't care about at all. And so they're like, if you want me to bow down to your magical language, I will go ahead and say all of the words, right? Inclusion and all that DEI. DEI is diversity, equity, inclusion. It's woke speak.
Yes. Yeah. But even like there's a bunch of assumptions. There's a lot of radical, it's called radical now, thoughts in Christianity where, I don't know, like Christians are supposed to put the Imago Dei first, and then, you know, you're an image, and you're not supposed to. They describe everyone as LGBTQ plus, blah blah blah, and they put all those identities, and it's very implicit. Like, I'm born this way, I can't change. How do you accommodate me? And so that's all the language, and then they're trying to say something different. Should I introduce myself, by the way? Probably.
You should introduce yourself.
All right. I follow Paul, but anyways, so Paul often says I'm in the CRC, and I don't bother correcting him, but I grew up in the CRC.
You're not in the CRC?
No, we no longer, there's no local one. So most of my family, like all my extended family, is in the CRC, but there is no.
But the irony that everyone who is so involved in this in this debate, like none of us are CRC.
Yeah, but I mean, they baptized me, and I went to their schools, and all of my ancestors are CRC, and most of my extended family is CRC, and so I don't know. We're all still CRC. And then once you leave the CRC, you realize everyone thinks of you as CRC because you're Dutch. So you just, you don't get to leave, really. So
it's like the Mormons I was talking to yesterday.
Yeah. We probably would be there, but there's not a good local church. So, well, it's not close. We go to a church that's 5 minutes away. Like, it's a 5-minute walk, which is sort of important. And it's funny, that church is turning out to be more conservative than the CRC, which we didn't know 10 years ago, but sort of the way stuff has gone in Canada, the church has had to speak up more, and yeah, it's ended up more conservative, maybe not than I grew up in a rural CRC, so there's kind of a rural-urban divide that is always at play, as you can probably see in Synod, because the guys from the cornfield are like, enough of this, and then you get someone from Classis Toronto who starts weeping on stage. But anyways.
So I think today is the actual graduation that PBK had to go to, which is why you couldn't go to Synod. Either that or tomorrow is. And I think that's why he hasn't said it.
I'm not seeing comments. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So, yeah. apparently graduation is a big deal in the States. Like, we do not think of it like you guys. We would just skip ours sometimes. Like, it's just not a invite your whole family. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have. I mean, you guys have a lot more ritual up in Canada. You have more civic ritual than we do
Okay.
because you guys have a queen and you guys have. Well, now you have a king, King Charles. You must love King Charles
I don't think about.
III.
They purely exist to like make the laws work. Basically, everything goes up to the king. But practically speaking, we get a little angry. So the king has a representative called the governor general, which can be really annoying because it's someone who basically spends money. And so we get a little annoyed at that, but we don't really think about the royalty too much. Although, like everyone else, we did like Queen Elizabeth, so there's that.
Everybody liked Queen Elizabeth. She was a good queen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and Charles hasn't been as bad as I suspected he would be, but he's new.
So let's get back to it.
Yes, CRC. Yes.
Yes, I mean the language stuff. The whole left playbook is like the whole thing is affirmation equals love, right? You have to affirm. It's like if you don't affirm, and it's all conflated on the floor. It's very. I find it. If I was just watching this and I didn't quite know what was going on, I would find it very confusing, because the left's idea, the left's whatever you want to call them, they have a different idea of what is actually like. They're just trying to ban same-sex marriage and say you can't be for same-sex marriage, and that escalates into you hate us, you're kicking us out, we can't. It's like, I don't know. And what really bugs me is they've never allowed same-sex marriage. It's never been part of the rules. And there's these people getting up going, oh, 50% of my council supports same-sex marriage. What am I supposed to do? And it's like, you've never been allowed to marry same-sex couples. Like, I don't know. I don't feel a ton of sympathy for those. Like, there's a lot of complex situations, but to stack your whole leadership with people who don't believe what the CRC believes, and then to be shocked that being part of a denomination means acceding to the rules.
Did you see this?
No.
Okay.
Al Postma. There's a good Dutch name.
Yeah, so Al Postma.
Oh yeah, this thing.
Yeah, so Al Postma is Transitional Executive Director for CRCNA in Canada. So big guy, right? And on the 9th, which was last Friday, they put these cards on in and they had, because now the Synod has to start with a training on power and privilege. So on the tables this morning, part of the power and privilege training that CRC Synod starts with, restorative practice, and it's all of this bullshit.
The thing with that, so I mean, a little bit of it can be okay, but like PVK pointed this out too, it doesn't actually work. You can't sit down people for an hour and
it's
and
worse.
change,
It has a backlash.
It has a backlash, and then also the real frustration, like a whole bunch of the language, including the language that continues through the week, is that power is evil implicitly. Like, all power is tyranny, and like, why are you in a denomination?
Jonathan actually went to Calvin University, and he lives next to it. Yeah, he lives near it.
He should be on here.
Well, he wasn't. He's never actually been a member of the CRC though.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was raised, I believe, Baptist. He went to Calvin as a Catholic, and now he's a Noahide.
Okay. Oh, that's disappointing. I'll give you a little anecdote, Jacob. I don't quote me on this stuff. hear things, but I believe with this 73 report on homosexuality that they keep referencing, they consulted my great uncle because he was a professor of Old Testament studies at Calvin.
Okay.
And he so he was all traditional, and then they asked him, so what does the Old Testament say about homosexuality? And he basically said it doesn't say anything. Like, yeah, so kind of now sorry to add
anything about homosexuality. Yes.
Now to add to that, he 99% certain was gay. And I don't know, he served as a professor. I think he did run into issues at one point with a bit of that. But anyways,
well, I mean, okay, so Judaism and the Old Testament, I would say, don't say anything about homosexuality. And actually, that was one of the things that I kind of got into with Jonathan when, as he's been trying to get out of Christianity more into Judaism, is yes, I know, Phlebas, you lost one. But having a Yetzer Hara, having an inclination towards any sin, is not considered weird in Judaism at all. It's not some sort of being fallen. It's not, right? But that it is a sin is clear.
Yeah, so that's coming up, I think, in Synod too. Like, is that what they mean by theology of desire? Like, so there's this line.
I wasn't watching today.
Okay, so there's a bit of, are you condemning me for identifying as gay, or are you condemning me because I'm married? And somebody asked a question, I believe it was about theology of desire, which I assume is like desire to sin. And it's a lot about what we talk about and what you talked about and what whatever his name on the Exodus series was kind of hinting at, is that the desire is that sin. And like Synod, so on the floor, the language, no, they didn't, Sandy. They did not say the desire itself. So like they're pretty clear in the overtures, but on the floor, the language is not very clear at all sometimes to some pretty basic questions. And so they said, we expect LGBTQ, whatever, people to participate in the church and be members and yada, yada. The line is crossed when you support same-sex marriage or are married, same-sex married, then you cannot serve in leadership. Like that's, so anyways, that.
So Rabbi Mullet is watching, and he'll appreciate this. Rabbi Breitowitz, his official stance is that an Orthodox Jewish synagogue can have as members a same-sex couple living together who join as individual members, but not as a couple.
Yeah. And that's a little bit about what I was saying about seeding the language. Like in the Christian worldview, at least the traditional one, there is no such thing as same-sex marriage. Like that's not a marriage.
Well, yeah.
So you can't even just all this little language stuff that sort of sneaks in, and it just becomes very standard to say same-sex marriage. And now, are we going to accept it or not? Like already you've sort of legitimized it. And if your position is it's not even a marriage, that can change the conversations and
so
can even change the rules. Like people are asking, okay, what if I join and I'm already married? Well, if your church's position is that that's not even a marriage, I don't know how that plays out in really practical terms, but I think it changes the conversation. Like people are like, am I supposed to break up? They asked on the floor today, am I supposed to break up marriages? And well, there's like that changes that answer, right? Well, it's not a marriage. It never was a marriage. So yeah, break up. Or if you accede to the language, then yes, it is a marriage. We just don't think it's legitimate. Like, and then this goes to the whole ecclesial state marriage sort of conversation that they were discussing the other day as well. Touches on that. So that was interesting too.
So the Talmud, and this is 1500 years ago at least, has a discussion where they're discussing why God hasn't destroyed the world despite all of the sin. And one particular sage, his opinion is that that because there are three, so the three cardinal sins in Judaism are idolatry, murder, and sexual immorality. And this is actually what it says in the Talmud, right? That despite the fact they murder people, they don't sell body parts by the pound in the market, which plenty of people had all kinds of things to say when the Planned Parenthood videos came out. That despite of all the idolatry, there's still respect for the Torah. And the second thing, which I left for last, is that despite all the sexual immorality, at least they don't perform marriages for two men.
Yeah. Yeah, so that kind of answers that. That was interesting though about the synagogue thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, Rabbi Breitowitz is ultra orthodox, so he's not some, the thing is, there's actually a movie which a lot of Christians, when I recommend it, it's called Trembling Before God. A lot of Christians, when they watch it, are surprised by how accepting Orthodox Judaism seems to be. But the Orthodox community was actually kind of upset at how it made the Orthodox Jewish community seem less accepting than it is. But I think the entire thrust is just so different generally, because at least when you ask the rabbinic leadership, like the vast majority of the rabbinic leadership and the vast majority of all of Orthodox Judaism is quite adamant that so we don't consider intermarriage between a Jew and a Gentile to be a marriage either, right? And I actually had somebody who contacted me who wanted to know about more about Judaism, and they had no, this is a Jew, don't worry, but Orthodox Judaism, and they didn't come from an Orthodox background, and their spouse wasn't Jewish, and they kind of thought that if they go to an Orthodox synagogue, everybody's going to try to break them up. And it was like, no, that's not how it works. Like, yes, we don't.
But they would try to convert them?
Depends the conditions. There are a lot of things. So there are many situations in which they would encourage conversion. So, for example, Michael Sartori's wife and 3 daughters are all Jewish.
Really?
And he's not. Yes.
I had no idea.
Well, they're Christian, but as far as we're concerned, they're Jewish. So his wife is Jewish, so all of his children are Jewish, right?
Oh yeah.
So when you're married to a Jew and all of your children are Jewish, generally most rabbis not discourage you converting. Because our general position is we discourage conversion to Judaism, which a lot of people find very surprising.
Yeah. Yep. What else is on my list? Did you so one of the things going on at Synod is almost every time somebody of like a minority group, I can use that phrase, like to the point where they don't even speak English.
Yes, I've noticed.
Almost every time they get up, they're like, what are we doing? We stand for traditional marriage. So for a long time, the progressives today have been saying, if we do this, it's going to destroy my church. We're going to lose members, yada, yada. And then the Koreans enter the ring and like they're standing on the top rope and they jump right into it. And they're like, if you guys back out on this, we're all gone. They just came out and said it.
Yep.
They're like, we joined because you have clear confessions. We didn't join because you were so amazing and we love Dutch people. He said some funny things. He's like, we joined because you have these clear documents and you're holding the course. And now we're like pretending the Bible doesn't say this stuff. And anyways, so I don't know. Paul gave the numbers once that it's like 15% or something like that. And it's like, and then that voice kind of gets ignored, right? It's another guy who's Spanish and gets up and speaks. And I haven't quite placed the Navajo guys where they are on it. I don't know if they're, I haven't watched maybe close enough. They, we used to have a CRC missionary in our church who he like lived with the Navajos for 50 years. But he would come back once a year, ask for money.
Okay, I have to ask, Trey, where are you driving to now?
I'm at my house. So I'm not driving anywhere. The only place I drive is to park. But I do want to ask.
Why are you in your car then?
I'm always in my car. It's where I live, okay?
By the way, if you want to come over, you're welcome.
Okay. I'll come over. I got to take a shower, but I'll come over.
Okay, sounds good. Bible study starts in an hour.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do it.
Okay.
I do have a question. What do you think of the side A arguments? Do you think they stand? Do you think there's any validity to it? Because from what I understand, the churches that are growing are the ones that are more like.
What are you calling side A?
Side A and side. Wait. Am I wrong? There's side A Christianity and side B Christianity, accepting versus non-accepting. Do you think that there's any validity to their arguments for accepting same-sex marriage? General question.
So I haven't looked up that whole side A, side B thing, but it's interesting. So I feel like the non-denominational churches are still like growing and big, like the bigger churches where people can kind of hide and they just show up on Sunday. I feel like they're still fairly large, but
yes,
denominationally, I think you sort of do have to draw a hard line to grow now. I don't know. That's my impression. Like I don't know if you saw the art. Have you followed this at all? Like a representative from the RCA, which again, I don't know very much, but I think they have just struggled to answer the question. And basically all the conservatives left, which so far is like close to half the church population.
And they are considering like uniting with the CRC if the CRC gets its act together, right?
Yeah, but that's got to be the first time Dutch people decided to join together. like my grandparents actually left over one set of my grandparents. They left my church over women in office. And then but now my grandfather has died and my grandma came back. So
okay, I pull this every single time I hear about any sort of ethnic church. I believe this is from Matthew. Where is this from? Matthew's 28.
Yes.
Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age."
Okay, so
And-
how are you interpreting that?
How do you have an ethnic church?
Oh, because the passage says that nations are the proper division of the church. Go and make disciples of the nations. The nations still exist. I just made that up on the spot, but no, honestly,
But Paul, the founder of your religion, says there is no Jew or Greek in
That's
Christ
not a
Jesus.
good.
No,
Yeah, no,
that's
that's not.
backwards, Jacob.
The better answer is accident.
is what, Trey? You're blinking out.
Again, like it's. Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, so that's
I would say
why
that
you go
it
to
would
your
be
car.
an accident.
You have
and
no
it would be-
reception in your apartment.
Yeah, that's also correct.
Why don't you
no,
have
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi? in your
Okay.
apartment? Okay, we'll discuss this later.
No, it takes a second to connect. Okay, relax. Anyways, I would say that it would be due to economical guidelines rather than actual racial lines. Neighborhoods have mostly been established by immigrants and everything like that. Then they create churches. So it's not something we're creating. It's an accidental cause.
Yeah, like the CRC I grew up in only existed because the Canadian government had a program for Dutch immigrants following World War II. And they brought in like 100,000 Dutch immigrants, and none of them spoke English, so they all went to church to have more Dutch people. But another answer to your question, Jacob, is whatever. Is it like Revelation 5 or something? All the nations, all the peoples around the throne, but it's not saying you have to have one of each person in your church.
That's
It's like all the nations are present. It's a celebration of diversity, but it doesn't mean. I mean, in your body, obviously, you don't want to exclude people.
Well, I mean, you're preaching to
Wait.
the choir. I very much believe in different. So
Well, I've got more thoughts on this, Jacob.
yes. Go
well.
ahead.
I
Wait,
need to
we're
ask-
talking to Jacob. How did the Ethiopian Jews go, Jacob?
I am very, very, very critical of all the racialism within Judaism, which I think is completely wrong.
Okay, so remove the log out of your own eye before you criticize us. That's all I gotta say.
Trey, that's actually what I heard somebody said in Senate. That's something people throw at people left and right. It's like, if you are not perfect, you can't. Okay, I have to tell my joke now. So, a woman who's accused of adultery is brought to Jesus, and Jesus says, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." And this woman picks up a stone and throws it at her, and everybody else picks up stones and throws it at her, and they kill her. And Jesus turns to the woman and says, "Mom, I didn't mean you."
That doesn't work for Protestants.
Yeah.
I still think it's hilarious.
We don't buy that additional stuff.
I don't buy it either. Trust me.
But okay, so a lot of this stuff is the difficulty of building a community around nothing, sort of, right? So Jewish people know all about building communities. They're Jews, so there's like something to cohere around. You can all meet at the synagogue. So I don't know. I think about this stuff because my wife was a Mennonite. I was Dutch. So everyone I knew was Dutch. All my interactions were Dutch. I just had a community, right? Inherently. And when I was young, I saw that really negatively. I was like, we suck at evangelizing. There's no, which was true. There's no non-Dutch people. I saw it all negatively, and there was negative things to see. And now that I go to a church that doesn't have that basis for a community, I'm like, holy cow, we have nothing in common. We struggle to make true community. Like the community that I came from was way more closed and 1,000 times stronger. Like everyone went to everyone's funeral. Oh, some old person died. Well, they've been here 50 years. We're semi-related. We all came from Holland. We sing the occasional Dutch song together, blah, blah, blah. At the new church, it's like a lot of people are just passing through. Everyone's from different traditions. And it's like really, really hard to build community that way.
So there's two things that I think have really helped synagogues not have this problem. The first is the fact that in order to have services, you have to have 10 adult males. Without 10 adult males, you cannot have worship services. And that reduces the capacity of the community to fragment constantly. And the second is the Sabbath restrictions of not riding on a horse, not riding in a car, and not having a microphone. And
we got all that stuff.
Oh, right. You guys are Sabbatarians, right?
Well, sort of.
Sort of. But
it's all slipped away. It was very serious a long time ago.
Being able to walk to synagogue or church, I think, is really, really important.
Yes, Sandy, I do sing Ira Zighod.
In
the Hoya, glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth to the people whom he loves. And it's a famous Dutch hymn. I think Dutch people still sing it around Christmas or stuff like that, but you'd sing it in English and Dutch, and so all the people my age who were born in Canada, we would sing it in Dutch, even though okay, yeah. I don't have it in front of me. And I sang it in Dutch. I don't know the English. I sang it in the language I couldn't speak. So anyways, with the CRC, they attempt to build a community around confessions, right? And I think I'm not very smart, but this goes back to this bounded set, center set stuff, right? And I'm probably saying this all wrong, but a lot of people see this stuff as walls, and then PVK's over here talking about ideals and stuff, and he's sort of seeing this as this is what we cohere around. And yeah, I don't know. That Trevor Mao guy you were following on Twitter, he tweeted something, or he said something, maybe it was diversity in the body, but unity in confession, or something backwards like that. Anyways, and the Koreans came out and said, the only reason we're here is because we can cohere around these confessions. So it's been interesting. I've been enjoying the politics, like all the parliamentary rules. Now we have a parliament in Canada that barely functions. This is working a lot better. As bad as it seems, this is working quite a bit better. I think people misunderstand what they're actually doing. Like people are like, why aren't they discussing and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is the very end of the work. This is like all the work is done and we're just going to vote, essentially. There's a few comments.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's they are voting, and what I like about it, as opposed to what I see generally in every other place, is what I think is the only reasonable side is actually winning. Like, people have gotten fed up enough with the woke shit that they're like, nope, you can't. I am not letting you play any of your games. And it's like, oh, you want language, you want us to bow down, and they're like, I'll use all your magic words. But
yeah, it's been really interesting on the floor because the numbers, sometimes they're 80-20, sometimes they're 60-40. I don't think they're that close, right? But it's all the progressive people that are basically being allowed to speak. Most of the conservative voices are like, we don't need to even stand up. That thing on the screen speaks for us, and then we're going to vote it through. So that's been interesting.
They're done talking.
Yeah.
And frankly,
I got to ask you
when they're just going to expel, because it looks like they're going to expel everybody who put in a gravamen.
Yeah, so that's really convoluted too. The gravamen thing, I believe I was reading in the documents, they're going to clarify that. So people were like, oh, you can just submit a gravamen or gravamen, whatever it is, and you can just submit one and then secretly hold on to whatever belief you want. And they're going to clarify that is actually not, or maybe they did already, that is not what it's for. You're supposed to submit this. You're saying, I'm having a difficulty. And then your church addresses it. If they can't, then your classis addresses it. If they can't, then it goes to synod. But it's not like, well, I'll just permanently hold this position. And there's specific rules around it. It's like, you can hold this, and then you need to, it's like, you can hold this, but if you're in leadership, which this is all about people in leadership, if you're in leadership, you can't teach something else.
Right.
So, yeah. But anyways, what about that? It's tomorrow they do what the church order stuff. So like Neeland Avenue has an appeal. That's one of the controversial churches that has same-sex elder or whatever.
They're the ones that were censured last year.
Yeah, and their appeal is going to get denied. And then, honestly, so my hope, the problem is people constantly want to be the victim. So it's like we hold this really firm conviction, but we also want to stay in the CRC that explicitly tells us that's wrong. And you have to kick us out because we're the victim. I hope they leave on their convictions. Like, if this is your belief, leave the body. Don't ask the body to kick you out so that it looks like you have been abused. Like, the whole thing.
Right, but that's their entire identity. Their entire identity is I am a victim. That's all they want in the world, is to be a victim.
There's a lot of talk
they think being a martyr, that this is their cross. They are,
yeah. There's a lot of talk in the chat, like, oh, the hammer's coming down, and look at all this power and stuff. And it's like, well, actually, Neeland specifically nominated this person so that they would be a test case to challenge the church, which is really funny because I'm Canadian and we don't really have this test case stuff like you guys do with the Supreme Court and whatever. So it's kind of an interesting approach to see at Synod, and that, anyways, Synod's different than U.S. law. Yeah.
I want to address David Walker's, by the way, hello, David. He says, to be honest, during this time of reaction, I do feel bad for the people struggling with trans stuff because it's either side yelling. So I, in my insurance business, health insurance business, have many trans clients because it's difficult and they need help. And I know dozens of trans people. And I don't know if I would say most, but I would say definitely several of them are people who don't want anybody to know that they're trans, who generally do pass as trans, as the other gender. Oftentimes were being misgendered, as in people thought they were already of the other gender before they started transitioning, right? So like there's this whole concept a lot of people have, which is, oh, trans people are like these men who are obviously men who just want to pass off as women. And it's like, no, actually, I think most of the trans men, I mean, trans women, meaning men who transition to be women that I know, were already being mistaken for women before anything they themselves were in any way thinking of themselves trans, really.
Are these people who transitioned before they turned like 18?
No.
Okay.
So underage transition is also a very new thing. What's going on like, I've been living in Los Angeles my entire life. I've been involved with LGBTQ plus minus issues for well over 20 years. When I was in law school, I worked at HALSA, the HIV/AIDS Legal Services, at the LGBTQ Center. This is not something I'm new to, right? And so what is the discussion is just so far off from anything which in any way reflects. So the best statistics we have is that 50% of gay men voted for Donald Trump. 50% of gay men voted for Donald Trump, and it's quite likely that a larger percentage of lesbians voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You don't hear this, right? And even even it's like difficult to say in front of a lot of people. And
I just want to address Nathaniel here. This is interesting because it basically is always conservative splits. Like the split that my grandparents went with to the URC, it was like 60,000 people who said, no, women do not belong in office, and they split away. The reason this is sort of so weird and awkward is because it's sort of the progressives who need to split this time, and they literally don't know how to do it. Especially because a large part of Calvin is, well, in this Grand Rapids East, I don't know, maybe he left, but is Calvin actually in Grand Rapids East? Like, Neeland is like 20 minutes away from the campus, right?
right.
So there's, I mean, Grand Rapids is like all CRC, so I'm sure there's all flavors of CRC. But I did find it interesting that they're going to leave the gallery open because people from Neeland probably live 5 minutes away and can just pop over and make their presence known. But I mean, the gallery behaved today. Maybe that'll continue. So, yeah.
Well, I think the protests will probably be when the votes come down, which apparently is going to be tomorrow.
That's the discipline stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, like, this idea of a trans pipeline, like, there's no trans pipeline. I'm sorry, there really isn't. If you want to hear an intelligent, reasonable trans person talk, Blair White has a very large YouTube channel. And, like, anybody who insists on calling Blair White a he is just silly. And if you listen to Blair White talk, what she says is quite clearly, like, people already thought she was a female long before she ever considered herself trans. And Jonathan says, yes, Calvin Yu is the belly of the beast.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I
Trey,
think even Destiny admits that there is a trans pipeline.
there has started to be a trans pipeline among youth. That so
Yeah.
I mean, we can get as deep into the LGBTQ issues.
No, we're
as
sticking
we
with
want.
Synod.
Yeah, but maybe we'll do that in Bible study.
Yeah. I do want to ask. Paul always. So, like, first question. Well, I don't understand why, like, same-sex marriage is like, because I think for the CRC to survive, they sort of need to accept same-sex marriage, or at least
No,
like not make it an issue.
Trey,
Yeah.
no.
you are absolutely. Yeah, you're just wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Look at the statistics. Look at the statistics. Who is growing? It's more the mystical brands of Christianity that do not have
accept same-sex marriage at all.
no that
That's
don't mention it at the very least.
No.
No. That don't mention it.
No. That very explicitly, like, it's not even a conversation. That's the only people who are actually growing are the people who it is so obvious they will never do a gay marriage that they don't mention it.
Are we talking about the Orthodox?
All kinds of Orthodox.
Okay, hold up.
In Judaism as well.
Peugeot would be like, that is the wrong pattern. And that would be the end of discussion.
Yeah.
Hold up. I feel different on the ground. The churches I see dying are the ones that are sort of sticking to their ways, and the ones that are sort of thriving are the ones that are more like a concert experience.
Live in Los Angeles.
Right. Okay, fine. I mean, that's...
And even in Los Angeles, honestly, that's really not the case. It really isn't. It depends where you're looking. It depends. Los Angeles,
find me. Jacob, we can do this.
You live in Venice, Trey.
No, okay.
You don't even live in Orange County. Guess where everyone who's conservative is moving away from?
Right.
Venice.
Yes, I know. But again, if you're going to grow your numbers, you have to go in a metropolitan city, right? If you're in rural areas, at best you'll get a couple people. And I have been to more churches than you, okay?
This is absolutely silly. Hey, Bruce.
You know what? Prove me wrong. Look up
Trey,
what's the biggest churches. That's all I'll say.
Trey.
Yes.
The demographic numbers are so clear. It's not even a question. Bruce, welcome. It's nice having you here.
Can we mute Trey? He's loud.
He is.
Sorry, hopefully I'm legible. I'm out here by the fire.
What?
You're okay, Bruce.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I just popped on, but I haven't followed the Synod stuff at all. I feel like I'm way out of the loop. I have very, very, very cursory understanding of what's going on there.
Okay, I have another controversial topic specifically for Jacob. It's because you've watched a little bit.
Okay.
How do you feel about women on the floor? So I asked Pastor Paul, I said, do you feel that the dynamic has changed? And he just kind of sidestepped it. I don't know if he wanted to say anything, which is fine.
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting question, but I'm going to let Barb speak. Hello?
Hello, Barb. She's gone.
Okay.
Is this
she heard my question.
Well, there are some. So I tweeted this out on Twitter with the StreamYard link, and it's very clear that it is in fact.
Don't do that.
Why?
People might know me.
You're gonna get a bunch of randos.
Yeah.
Well, I said.
There you go.
I said CRC Synod live stream. All are welcome. Please have your cameras on and identify yourself. And I'm guessing Barb assumed that we must be on the affirming side, because who else would be on Twitter?
Right.
Live streaming.
It's funny that this is like on the same time. There's been the same sort of SBC controversy with women pastors, not trans, but women.
Well, okay, I have to say this is one of the things. So last year I drove Paul to the Senate and from Chicago. So I spent 2 hours in the car with him, and the two things I talked to him about was the human sexuality report and his position on women in office. And I keep on asking him, has he finally recognized that he was absolutely wrong in his women in office? And like, does he understand that the egalitarian position is wrong and the complementarian position is just obviously right?
Right.
And he just smiled.
He's very
Sandy-
winsome, this man. He's very winsome.
Sandy, I don't know much, Sandy, but I really feel like they're not going to tackle WECO again, the women in office thing. I mean, even
What's
Paul
the
said the
C
other
stand
day,
for? Church
women
office?
in church office, I think.
Okay.
Even PVK said the other day, the Koreans even have women, and they're like the most traditional people ever. I would be shocked, especially because even at just the local church level, as all these congregations shrink, they now actually need women to be deacons. At least
It's
in the
less
church.
than ideal. I think it's less than ideal.
Okay.
These are circumstances, but it's not the prescriptive normative nature. It might.
The Orthodox Union, which is the largest union of Orthodox congregations, Orthodox Jewish congregations in America, has recently issued a responsa just a few years ago regarding ordaining women. And frankly, it is so universally applicable. I think it is so right in so many ways that I highly recommend Christians consider reading it. And what they say is that there is, despite the fact that there have always been women who have been in positions of power, obviously Deborah, the judge, there have been prophetesses, etc. And even to this day, I don't think anybody, even in the most ultra-Orthodox sense, can deny that someone like Nehemiah Leibowitz was in fact a teacher of Torah to hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, right? At the same time, there is a prohibition of women in actual office over men that the Orthodox Union said is integral to the Jewish position.
Mhm.
That when a woman is by her personal charisma accepted by many men as a leader, that's fine, because that happens, and it obviously happens, and it obviously has always happened. But that does not mean that she can occupy an actual office of authority. And Nehemiah Leibowitz, to the end of her life, the only thing anybody ever called her was Mora, which is what you call a kindergartner teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, so it's less than ideal is the way I see it. It's not the standard.
Yeah, it was.
I think it's important that it's not an office. Like, you cannot put women in an office and expect them to get that authority. It just doesn't work. If a woman personally has that charisma, I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, the other thing about Synod is that it's a body full of amateurs, right? So I saw somebody ask early on, like, oh, is this the CRC's best and brightest? And it's like, no, it's like pig farmers and people who said, yeah, sure, I'll go. Like, there would be quite a few classes where they would struggle that maybe not to this one because it's so controversial, but it happens every year. there'll be classes where people don't want to go. So it's like an amateur body. Anyways, I
So
did
it's
ask
Protestant.
that. Yeah.
I
But yeah,
have to
I was
criticize
curious about what you saw in the dynamics, because I did actually really want to know from Paul what the dynamics were of the all male body, because every time I watch Synod, I don't want to make this sound cruel or whatever, but the women, they get up and like 30% of the time they cry, and I feel like we're addressing a theological question, and then people want to bring their particular anecdote in because women are more relational. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like they lose the thread a lot of times.
Yeah, I think it's also. I mean, I think you see that in the rise of charismatics because of the large amount of female leadership, and so you see those sort of emotional appeals being held as authentic in some way, and I think they're related.
Yeah.
Do you guys think the CRC needs to go charismatic?
No, in fact, the opposite.
I don't think it could.
Wholly the opposite.
So Bruce, you're the person who would actually be able to answer this for me, and I've been thinking a lot about it. So the CRC holds to the what they call the three forms of unity.
Yep.
Are there any other bodies with which they might possibly unite, which also hold just to those three confessions?
Oh yeah.
You have the Heidelberg Catechism, the Belgic Confession, and the Canons of Dort.
Correct.
You could see they would be allowed as potential members, but maybe not holding office in a number of congregations, Presbyterian and Baptist. But the issue would be holding office.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
So, like, you could be a member in many of those churches. A confessional member, communion, but you wouldn't hold an office of deacon or elder or teacher unless you affirm the confession that they hold, which would be Westminster or 1689.
What's 1689?
Yeah, what is
London,
that?
The Second London Baptist Confession of Faith.
The second
written-
what? Baptist?
Yeah, so you have the Westminster Confession of Faith, which is 1646, and then you
Okay.
have the 1677, but it was officially released in 1689, which is the Baptist distinctive of the Westminster. But they're basically word for word the same, with the exception of baptism and a little bit of polity difference. But what I mean is, these other churches, Westminster or 1689 Confessional Baptist, would not have them as leaders, teachers, unless they totally affirmed the confession.
The CRC is pedo-Baptist.
Yeah, so they would be more welcome in the Presbyterian position for sure, but they'd have to wholly confirm the Westminster standards or the Westminster Confession, and they may. There have been, congregations that are mixed before, three forms of unity, Westminster, but they're very similar.
So, what do you think might be something that would keep the CRC from adopting the Westminster Confession? They actually mentioned a fourth confession that they were considering, but they turned down recently.
Yeah, there's a couple
Confession?
things. No, there's something called the Belhar Confession.
Belhar Confession, that's it.
Which, again, somebody could Google this, but I'm pretty sure that came out of South Africa as a response to apartheid, because there's all sorts of Dutch churches.
Oh, it's anti-kinist?
Well,
So-
that would be one of the things,
okay.
probably. I don't know.
There wouldn't be any significant differences between the confessions. The Westminster is just the one that people would hold to. The standards are more. There's more distinction around the covenantal theologies, and around Sabbatarianism, But in fact, many of the Westminster folks would affirm much of the three forms of unity. They quote
So
from
the
them.
CRC tends to be very Sabbatarian, or apparently.
Yeah, and
I mean, not
again,
really anymore.
they really could be in the Presbyterian churches. I don't think they would. It'd be interesting. I could see them, joining with the PCA in a sense, but there's so many organizational differences. But I mean, yeah, they could be in the PCA. I don't see why not.
If
The
you
Presbyterian
haven't
Church of
watched,
America.
if you haven't watched the video that PVK made about Pastor, I don't even know how to say his name, Kronig or whatever, goes to Washington.
Hmm.
Vander Klug.
Vander Klug.
Klug.
I don't know this guy. Yeah, I don't know this other guy.
Okay. Yeah, he's just somebody who apparently is a great evangelist, actually apparently from Southern California. I mean, honestly, like, watching that video, like, it was like PVK was like, this is the working of the Holy Spirit, and in a sense, I agree with him. I think you really saw like the Spirit of God working in Synod at that vote, and like that it was really beautiful to watch. I think, Bruce, I would be very interested to see your reaction to that whole discussion and that vote yesterday.
Yeah.
I'd have to take a look at it. I could see many of the parishioners of the CRC-NA or the CRC moving to a Presbyterian church if things didn't get settled.
But aren't a lot of the Presbyterians gay affirming and doing same-sex marriage?
The PCUSA is. Yeah, the PCUSA is. The PCUSA is an absolute apostate denomination at this point, but the PCA is a little more legit. There may be some PCUSA church out there that I'm not aware of that's conservative, but the PCA is, there are a couple of like liberalish PCAs, and then there's the OPC, which is like the hardcore Presbyterian. It's called the Orthodox Presbyterian Church of America, which
the Poway shooter came from OPC.
Oh yeah, so Machen did that, and he wrote the book Christianity and Liberalism, in the 20s, I want to say 30s, and so I could see like the super conservative CRC folks going to like an OPC or a conservative PCA, and I think they would feel right at home. Paedo Baptist, they affirm very similar confessions. Yeah, I could see that. But anyone that's on the liberal fence, I don't know where they would go. Maybe PCUSA would be the place to go if you wanted some pseudo Presbyterian confession with all sorts of gay and trans affirming people. So that's where they could go.
Well, I mean, so my whole thing is I'm hoping for the various Christian churches all to unify, because once they all unify, then the Messiah will come and take over. And so, like, I would love to see like the CRC stop being so particularly Dutch, frozen chosen, and at part of a larger global thing. And I think it would be healthy for them as well, because that's what you see in the Anglican Communion, which is that actually it's the Nigerian and Sub-Saharan African, and I guess also Latin America and East Asian influence, which is actually keeping them sane.
Yeah.
Wait, Anglicans don't count though, do they?
I mean,
aren't they the most like liberal denomination?
Today they do not.
Not in Nigeria.
Not in Nigeria.
Yeah, there are conservative folks out there in the Anglican churches, but they are fewer and far between. Yeah, it's definitely more rare.
Jacob, I have
go ahead. That's funny because that's happened in the Methodist Church too. Like the Methodist churches abroad in the world have broken off or are attempting to break off because of the liberal nature of the United States Methodists.
Market, the Japanese market.
Okay, so I am going to end this stream in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Because we're going to have Bible study afterwards.
Okay, we got things to get through. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
another controversial thing, Jacob. I have an apology to make to you on behalf of the CRC, which I no longer attend.
Yeah.
I was researching CRC history.
Yeah, what'd you do?
And it kept coming up that Paterson, New Jersey,
Yeah.
where PVK is from, was started as a Jewish outreach. And so there was
it always backfires every single time.
And I'm talking in like 1905, right? Like
it
very
always backfires every single time.
So I was reading these articles about all the good work we were doing among the Jews. And then there was a really interesting article where it said 2 rabbis came to the church meeting, whatever meeting it was.
Mm.
And they stood up and they said, if you keep trying to evangelize our children, we will perceive that as hostile or something along those lines. They were not happy about it.
Yes.
Anyways, I thought that was really funny that PVK is from Paterson and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's hilarious to me that every single time any Christians have tried to evangelize to Jews, it's always backfired. Like the entire Noahide movement was started by the Southern Baptist Convention trying to evangelize to Jews. Did you know that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's what happened. So they thought they were going to, they're like, hey, anytime we evangelize to any other community, we like adopt their language and we translate the Bible and we adopt as many of their, as much of their culture as is applicable to Christianity. So why don't we start making these synagogues, which are essentially churches dressed up as synagogues, right? And they started using Hebrew and having Torah scrolls and all, everything like being culturally appropriate to Jews. And like 0 Jews came, but a bunch of Gentiles came. And these Gentiles liked Judaism so much and learned Hebrew and stuff and started learning more about Judaism that is actually where the Noahide movement came from. And 50 years ago, there were zero Noahides. Now there's around 100,000, and it was basically completely all created by the Baptists.
Yeah, that's the that sounds right. There's a whole other crew of like they're like Torah observant Christians that come out of those movements too.
Yeah, all of this is a result
Hebraic roots.
Hebrew roots, Messianic Judaism. So the Baptists started Messianic Judaism.
Yep.
Jews for Jesus, that type of stuff.
It's largely influenced by this dispensational rapture theology where Israel has to come to a head.
Yep. And they started the Noahide movement. So like it's like, what can I say? Thank you. So hearing that Paul Vanderklay is a result of this as well is just hilarious.
Yeah. I got a question for Bruce. So one of the issues in the CRC is there is these 3 forms of unity which provide unity, but they're like 500 years old, right? And so part of the issue with the synod thing is they had to, because people maybe weren't getting the message or something, they said, we got to somehow shoehorn homosexuality into one of these 3 forms and then make up this thing called confessional status for this interpretation of the confession so that everyone understood homosexuality is banned by the confessions. And so there was a modern attempt a number of years ago. They tried to do the Belhar confession. You'd have to ask Paul about it. I don't know anything about that story. I assume it was too social justice or I don't know, too much racism stuff, and people voted it down. One of my aunts was on a committee like 10 years ago to try and write a new confession. And there's something called the contemporary testimony. There's like a bunch of attempts at this because everyone recognizes 500 years is too old. Like we do have some new things to say, and there's some poor language in the confession. So anyways, I was curious if, I don't know what you're in or if you are confessional, but have you encountered that issue?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a Reformed Baptist, so I hold to the 1689. And yeah, I mean that's happened a lot. There's been a number of confessions that have like modernized or created a new confession based on like the Baptists. Many of them use the Baptist Faith and Message, which is from 2000. It's called the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. There's also a number of them that are in the 1800s. There's a common one, the New Hampshire Confession. In those cases, what they really did was try and attempt to remove a lot of the exclusivist Calvinist doctrine and make it much more large 10 umbrella. And that's kind of where those go. So I've seen that before. I'm not surprised by it at all.
Well, I think right now the CFC, like people recognize the problem, but nobody's going to dare crack that open right now because basically it would be like an opportunity to modernize and progress and whatever. So
yeah,
they're not going to teach. They're not going to touch them for years. No.
There's a whole tenet out of the Reformation called Semper Reformanda, which is this idea always reforming, and some people take that to mean like modernizing as opposed to like reforming to the older standard. So I mean, yeah, I could see that. I believe that's what they would have to do if they do this sort of a split. They'd have to have a modern confession that affirmed these things.
You see that on the floor of Synod a lot, actually, that sort of implicitly, it's like the argument is we used to believe the wrong thing about slavery and we used to believe the wrong thing about race, and we've reinterpreted these things, and it's like we're progressing, and this is just the latest barrier that we're going to look back in 50 years and we're going to think, how did we ever think that? And I think this is just such.
It's the same narrative used by same narrative used by secularists when it comes to things like trans rights or civil rights. Yeah, it's the same thing. But they're not reforming to any older standard. They're rewriting, which is it's revolting. It's revolution. It's not reformation. It's a entirely silly progressive idea.
Yeah, I feel like they're messing with something way deeper.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that holds a lot of water. It's the same thing that has happened for years.
I mean, I do think that there is an argument that if you do uphold no same-sex marriage, you do have to uphold slavery is okay. I think in some sense, due to Paul's words and the mentions that they didn't outright ban it. I think that's an important argument.
No, I think that's a silly argument by somebody who's never read their Bible.
I mean, I don't think you can ordain man stealing in any way. You can ordain service.
No.
Trey, there is nothing
obey your masters.
Clear. No.
Yeah.
Trey, there is nothing so clear as the fact that the Hebrew Bible has disdain for slavery.
I'm talking New Testament. New Testament.
If you believe that the New Testament, that Paul wasn't the type of heretic that I think he was, then you don't read Paul to be completely the opposite of everything that the Ten Commandments. The first of the commandments is, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt, that from the house of slavery.
Yep.
Yes.
That is an explicit condemnation of slavery right there.
But Paul also says to obey your masters as a very explicit thing and he doesn't
Okay, so
advocate
you know what?
revoluting.
You're absolutely right. Paul
Right.
was horrible and should never be listened to. But that's
No.
if you are willing to read Paul as being opposed to what the Bible clearly teaches, which most Christians thankfully are not.
You have to read Paul
I-
with the rest of the scriptures, is what he's saying.
Oh, okay, then why can't we do? Okay,
So
I would
so
at
when he
least.
says-
This,
So when he
Partially
says obey your
explicit
masters, yeah. So when he says
Yeah.
obey your masters, you also have to take into account the Jewish scriptures and whatever. Although interestingly, with the rest is history and Tom Holland and whatever, that passage is a bit more challenging because Tom Holland, whatever they were talking about, they were basically like slaves are constantly sexually available to their masters in the Roman Empire. And then you read Paul saying slaves obey your masters, and it's like, oh, that is a whole different level than what people normally think of. Oh, you have to keep, making supper.
Well, this is what
I
I
mean,
tell
Ephesians.
Father Stephen. Look, I don't think it's actually a valid reading of Paul to try to make Paul actually make sense. But I prefer that Christians try to make Paul make sense than actually read Paul as I would.
No,
And
I-
look, those are your two choices. You can read Paul
No.
like I do, which is against the rest of the Bible, or you can
Yes.
try to you can read Paul
Dude.
as going along with the Bible, which means not the way you were reading it.
no. Well, hold
yeah,
up. Ephesians 6:5-8. Just read that to me, and then let me know what you think.
You want to know what I think, or you want to know what Bruce?
It's not Bible study
read
yet.
this thing.
Okay, it's not Bible study
in
yet.
5 minutes.
All I'm saying is, even in the Old Testament, it doesn't advocate rebelling.
Rebellion?
No, overthrowing the state, does it?
Overthrowing the state, but it explicitly says that if an escaped slave comes to refuge, you are not allowed to return him to his master. Now, Paul apparently didn't read that part, but that's beside the point.
Well, that again, these were all points to Israel.
No.
If they were in Babylon,
Trey, it
Yes.
explicitly endorses slaves fleeing their captors. Explicitly.
For mistreatment.
Okay,
No.
okay, fine. I'll take that. Those are dictations to Israel. What happens if Babylon, if they're under Babylonian rule and slavery is allowed? Would they?
You are
Would
still
God's
allowed-
commandments?
You are still allowed. If you can flee, you should flee. That's
Okay.
the Jewish understanding.
Jacob, we're off topic again. How much
Anyways,
time do we
sorry,
have?
sorry.
You have like 0 minutes, but go ahead.
Okay,
I'll
be-
I wanted to ask you about your boomer impressions.
Oh,
So,
right.
wait.
yeah.
One thing in context. So my family is sort of split.
Yeah.
Mo, I wish he was here because he regularly interacts with my brother on Voices, and me and my brother do not agree. And but also my dad is now progressive.
Okay. God have mercy on
And-
his soul.
All the reasons he gives, I'm like, that doesn't have anything to do with theology. That is such a boomer reason, and you see it on the floor a lot too. It's like a sympathetic.
Yeah.
Well, how do I include my children in the church if they don't? Blah blah blah. Anyways, I was curious about your tweet about. Yeah, okay, they're older people and they're sort of boomers, but did you have like a legitimate critique?
Oh no. So this is, I mean, it wasn't just it was also a comment I made on PBK's video. Like, watching Synod, it is boomers being boomers. Like, it's not just a matter of the technology and stuff. They seem to be completely unaware of where the culture is, where the young generation actually is, how things are progressing in our society, right? And so, like, when I say boomers, so whenever I see one of these white, usually women, but not always, um, uh, CRC members with a Dutch last name,
And
All-
a stylish pair of colored glasses.
always above the age of 30, probably usually above the age of 40 or 50, right? And they are so steeped in this culture of what appears to be just Grand Rapids. Bunch of white people who know nothing about almost never actually know a gay, like actual gay people, right? They may be aware of one gay cousin, right? But like they certainly don't. They've never been to the Los Angeles Pride Parade, right? I think if you had the Los Angeles Pride Parade down in Grand Rapids, suddenly a lot of people would change their minds.
Yeah, same in Toronto.
Uh,
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
But there's
There-
there's just a lot of they're just ignorant.
yeah,
And
I think
it's crazy ignorant, and that's what. If you haven't watched my discussion with Teo, so
I've seen it all.
Okay. Teo, I did an interview with Teo for my one of my classes, and it was this woke bullshit, right, that I had to do, and it's people like Teo, Mo, me, people who actually know what this woke bullshit is deep down, right? Are the people who understand that mostly it's a grift that that is manipulating ignorant white people.
Yeah, I think it shifted too fast. Like the boomers, we'll call them, like my dad.
Mhm.
Like he was chair of council for a whole lot of years, and I think there's some guilt there about certain members and the way it went down. But they don't realize at all where we are now. Like even so, we've got young kids, and even people who have kids that are like 15, but they also have kids that are say 5 or maybe 5 and 10. They're like, there has been such a huge shift. And so the CRC is big into Christian education. And so we moved our kids to a private school, which is enormously expensive. And the schools, the Christian schools, are turning people away because I don't think people realize how conservative young couples with children are. Like a lot of them are very
Especially
conservative.
young couples with children. Yes.
Yeah. And then same on Synod floor. Like I wonder if these people, so they talk about diversity and whatever, the diverse voices speak up against this stuff. And then actually the young people, so there's 4 youth delegates. They don't have voting privileges, but they've been, for the most part, speaking up.
How do they
Defending-
get selected?
I couldn't actually tell you that. One of the guys from my church went when he was a kid. You're probably nominated by classis, but there's only 4 spots. So he is a pastor now, so it could have something to do with that. But that he definitely was not a pastor back then. So, anyways, I think these people are way out of touch about the backlash that is coming, and the amount of conservative young people that are actually interested in a church that speaks clearly about this stuff.
This is my biggest worry. The backlash is just going to. I fear the backlash is going to be terrible. I am not worried about the woke actually accomplishing anything. I don't think they're competent or capable of accomplishing anything. I am merely worried about the backlash.
Yeah. I don't know. They're accomplishing some stuff up here. A lot of the fights we see in the States, it's like, oh, we did that like 5 years ago.
Yeah, no. I mean, okay, so apparently California is debating a law to remove children from their parents if they're not trans affirming.
Yeah, we already have that. I don't quote me on that. We have stuff like that. A lot of that hasn't, like with all the Peterson stuff, a lot of that's in law, but you have not necessarily been dragged. They haven't necessarily dragged people before the Human Rights Commission and enforce this stuff. But like, for instance, in the public school system, they will transition your kid
Without your knowledge.
without your knowledge.
We have
Like
that.
that's been standard for a long time.
Yeah.
And then they passed the legislation banning what they call conversion therapy, which only goes one way, and happens to
Honestly, the
be the
number one
backwards.
thing I've been telling any of my friends who will listen is take your kids out of the public schools and put them in Catholic schools.
Yeah, that's a little different up here.
The thing is, frankly, from everything I've seen, it is only the Catholic schools that you can in any way trust, despite the fact that obviously there's a lot of very left-wing Catholics and teachers and stuff like that.
Yeah, the problem here is the Catholic schools are fully funded by the government, and the Christian schools, at least in my province, have specifically never pursued funding because they did not want to be influenced. So the Catholic schools are so close to public schools, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. And occasionally they run into issues and people are like, what are you trying to teach my kid? And they're like surprised, even though they send their kid on purpose to a Catholic school, they're surprised they're doing Catholic things. But
well, the Catholic, I mean, this is the thing. Like, I ultimately trust the Vatican far, far more than I trust any other organization in this like crazy world. I trust the Vatican more than I trust the chief rabbinate of Israel. That's for sure. And Chezi loves hearing me say that. We are going to start Bible study soon.
Okay.
As soon
going
as
to bed.
Jason, yeah, you should go to bed. Okay, I am going to end this stream.
Thanks,
And
Jacob.
Bible study will be starting in a few minutes. Bye, people.